I have a son who loves maps. Ever since he was little, whether we were at the zoo or a state park, he would love to pick up a copy of the map at the office or the ranger station. He is our kid who loves to have a plan. So we could see him plotting out our journey based on this roadmap in front of him. And then he would help guide our family along the way. And of course, notify us if we missed anything as well. When we go on vacations, even now, we love to hand the map over to Lars and ask him to help us figure out where we should go. How long will it take us? What do we need to notice? Maps, I would say, are always helpful tools on things like family vacations. They help us know where to go and what to do along the way. So today, I want to wonder with you, how does this translate to our faith? If faith is also some sort of journey, how do we know where to go, who to visit, or what to do along the way? Here at Calvary, we talk all the time about our mission, which is to lead all people to a lifelong faith in Jesus Christ. And maybe when you hear that, you could be thinking to yourself, that sounds really great on paper, but what does that even mean, to lead people to Jesus? Or, back up a step, what does it look like for me to follow Jesus here, there, and everywhere? Our theme for this series is Ready, Set, Move. And I invite you to think about it like a map. On our journey, we will get ready by reading a handful of important stories about Jesus and his followers. We'll get set by pausing to ask some questions, and we'll move by making it relative and applying it to our faith. Well, for today's theme, do what Jesus says, we are taking a look at something that Jesus says in the book of Matthew. Because part of carrying out our faith in daily life means looking at the things that Jesus actually taught his disciples and other followers of his day. And one of the most well-known parts, I think, of the book of Matthew is something that's often referred to as the Sermon on the Mount. To set the stage a little bit here, this is after Jesus has recruited most of his disciples. Jesus has been healing people who are sick. He's been teaching people, and they're hearing things about God that they never could have imagined before. The word about Jesus, it's snowballing. The crowds are starting to follow him everywhere that he goes. And we learn that Jesus goes up to a mountainside, and as it says in Matthew 5, Jesus sits down. And think about it. Prior to this, Jesus had constantly been on the move. So when he takes a minute to sit, that's a note to us to listen. And it's here in the Sermon on the Mount where we hear some of Jesus's most important words to us. We hear things like, "Blessed are the peacemakers. Love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you." Jesus reminds people listening to seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. So therefore, don't worry about tomorrow. And all of these teachings, they were filled with ideas that really made people think differently about their relationship with God and with other people. It was really, truly so different from the religious teachings that they were used to. And Jesus ties things together with this story in Matthew 7. We hear, starting in verse 24, "Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on a rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, yet it did not fall, because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like the foolish man who built his house on the sand. The rain came down, and the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a giant crash." See, every summer for the last several years, I've had the privilege of helping to chaperone a group of high school students from our church on a trip to a place called Rainy Lake. We go on a houseboat trip. We load up our cars and we embark on this 5-hour drive from our little town to the north central edge of Minnesota. Rainy Lake actually shares a border with Canada, believe it or not. And not this summer's trip, but last summer when we were caravanning back, I was in the middle of the pack. The van in front of me, it took a left turn off this main highway, and I admit I wasn't using my GPS. I was just following the person in front of me. So as I waited for these other cars to pass before I could turn, I got lost. I lost the people in front of me, the guiding cars. Normally, that would not have been a terrible thing. I could have just pulled over, opened my phone, and pulled out Google Maps to look at my destination. But there were 3 cars behind me, one of which was pulling a boat, and another of which was pulling a trailer. And if you are someone who has ever pulled a boat or a trailer before, you know it's not so easy to turn yourself around, especially on a 2-lane highway. So even though it was no big deal for me to whip my Subaru around on this highway, the truck behind me that was pulling the boat, it had to back into a dirt driveway and then pull the boat through part of a ditch. And sure enough, they blew a tire on that trailer. What would have been no big deal in a parking lot or a paved road was completely disrupted by this uneven, uncertain, sinking terrain of a ditch in the middle of nowhere. No matter how great of a driver my friend was who was pulling that boat, the tire on his trailer did not stand a chance when the foundation wasn't solid. And as we listen to Jesus' story from this part of Matthew about the house with the foundation made of rock versus one that's made of sand, I think this tire image is similar. So let's come back to that original question. How can we do what Jesus says? Well, what if we start by looking at our foundation? Ask yourself, what voices are the loudest in your life? Are they the voices of culture telling you who or you should or shouldn't be? Or are they the voices that remind you that you are exactly who God created you to be? There's no doubt our foundations, they might look a little different from one another, but just like that wise man in Jesus' story, when we build our lives on something solid, that foundation, it carries us through our journey, through all of the ups and downs that we might face.